Tornado Shot is in the most broken state it's ever been. With 3.17 came new bosses, and with these new bosses came new unique items. And this build revolves around one of them, the crystallized Omniscience. The Crystallized Omniscience. This amulet drops from the Searing Exarch and introduces a new stat, Omniscience. The way it works is taking the sum of all your attributes, transforming it into Omniscience, and you get 1% all res and 1% elemental pen per 10 Omniscience. So we're effectively an attribute stacking build. The gearing here is quite different from what we're used to for this type of build, but here's a mechanic breakdown of what you're going to need to make it work. What you should know first before starting this build. Let's go with the ugly. We are very vulnerable to damage over time, and the game has a lot of it right now. So learn how to use your life flask efficiently, and don't be afraid to sacrifice maybe some attributes and get chaos res instead. Also, while it's not the tankiest build out there, we still have layers of defenses, such as Grace, Determination, and Capped Spell Suppress. It's a plexiglass cannon, not a full glass cannon. Also, it can be quite difficult to gear, especially making rings, but I cover this in the rest of this video, so please keep watching everything. There is information all through this video, so... Now, the pros. This build has absolutely bonkers single target. By far the best bang for your bucks out there when it comes to bow build. I've never played a bow build with this much damage. For this budget, it's absolutely ridiculous. Also, it's a very fast mapper, and it's one of those legendary skills in PoE, so I really appreciate the fact that you can take this build, go in a map, farm your series, farm your invitations, farm everything, and it's going to be very, very seamless, and you don't have to change anything, so that's great. And also, one of the other pros is like, it won't cost you an arm to actually farm all this content. Sure, it's not a seismic trapper when it comes to budget, but I would say once you put some exalts in, maybe 15 to 20, you will not be disappointed. You will kill everything, and it's gonna make you feel really good, trust me, because I know it makes me feel really good, and I know how much I invested in it, and it definitely works. Now that you've been warned, here is the guide. In here, we don't really need to scatter critical strike since we're getting it all from the interrogation jewel and brittle, which is going to be one of the most expensive part of the build and has been sitting on trade for about 2.3x for a week. With this jewel and the cold damage from your bow and your chest, as well as some effect on your tree, it becomes really easy to reach 10 to 11% brittle, and in doing so, reach your crit cap without crit on your bow or anywhere else, allowing us to focus on projectile speed, crit multi, and attributes. Second mandatory item is, in my opinion, the Athena's Chant. I'm aware that we can now autocast marks with marks on hit, but this helmet brings so much quality of life that I have to recommend it. And of course, the build enabling Crystallized Omniscience with Utmost Intellect Anointed. You're looking for at least a 23% roll. It makes it easier to reach your attributes requirement. The other uniques in this build that I recommend are a 5-link Irisire for Spell Suppress, a chunky amount of Dexterity and cold damage to our attacks, a Lionized Fall for a ton of damage in this spot, a Timeless Jewel. Here it can be Lethal Pride or Brutal Restraint. On Lethal Pride, you're looking for percent or flat strength, double damage, or intimidate. You mostly need the strength though. On Brutal Restraint, which I'm using, you can get percent and flat dexterity, chance to blind, and onslaught on kill, which is very convenient if you can roll it. There is no easy way to buy those jewels pre-rolled, so here I just recommend buying it and just blast a few divines on it until you have something that you're happy with. Now for rares. We are a bow build, so of course we're going to need a bow. The cheapest way in my opinion is to buy a pre-rolled one with high elemental damage and of course mandatory cold damage, as high as you can get for brittle. The best base here is a spine bow, but you can use Imperial or Thicket, they also work great and are cheaper options. You're going to need 4 off colors on your bow, so using 2 red, 1 blue on crafting bench seems to be the easiest way to get them. Any of those bases with 700 DPS with Cold, of course, will do the job. We also need a quiver. This one is a bit tricky, but we're not really looking for +1 arrow on this setup. So instead, what we really want is projectile speed, accuracy rating, life, damage with bows, critical strike multiplier, flat damage, cold or fire, and ideally you'd like an open suffix to craft global critical strike plus frenzy charge on crit, so you can spec into the mark effect mastery instead of the frenzy charge generation in your skill tree. Now that we covered the quiver, we're going to need rings. These are the most volatile pieces in the build, as you need very specific stats, ideally 2 tier 1 attributes, it doesn't matter which one, strength, dex, intelligence. You also need life and absolutely an open prefix to craft the -7 to cost of skills on your 2 rings, or else your tornado shot mana cost is going to be too high, your mark cost is going to be too high, and the build is going to feel clunky. You can craft it yourself, you can buy it, but if you want to craft it, you have 2 ways. Either get an opal ring and try deafening essence of attributes until you hit double, triple good tier attributes, or what you can do is buy a fractured T1 attribute base, for example, like 51 to 55 intelligence, strength or dex, and then on top, like add an essence on top. So you guarantee double roll, and then all you have to do is get open prefix and life. It's a lot easier, but those bases can be quite costly now that the build has been out for a few days. And here are the rings that I'm using myself. I crafted them, and it didn't cost me much at all. I would say maybe 1 X per ring to craft. The build here is the same as rings, so either you buy or you craft a Stygian Vice with Essence of Spite or Essence of Sorrow until you get double attribute and life. And Chaos Res would be even like better, but a man can dream. Boots and gloves here, they're a bit specific. Ideally, you'd want those suffixes on boots. Spell Suppression, Dexterity or Strength, and Chaos Res. If you find those suffixes but with bad prefixes, like no life or no move speed, you can recraft either using Harvest or using the new currency Eldritch Chaos. But please, really read how the Eldritch Chaos works before using it, because you might actually accidentally reroll your suffixes, which should be a disaster. On gloves, we want these suffixes: Spell Suppression, high tier accuracy rating like 400, and strength or dex. Same thing for prefixes if you want to recraft them. Now, accuracy here is absolutely important, but if you feel like you're dying too much to degen's chaos damage in particular, which is my issue with the build, what you can do is maybe skip strength or dex on gloves or boots and get chaos res instead. To get positive res, this is gonna help a lot. There's only 2 rare jewels in this build, including 1 large cluster. In here, you really want martial prowess, fuel the fight, and feed the fury. The base doesn't have to be bow damage, but it's better to have it, but you can count more exalts on average than another one. The other jewel should be a Searching Eye jewel with life and as much fire damage and to bow attacks as possible, such as this one, to help balance your trinity. If your bow has cold and lightning damage, instead go with lightning damage, right? So you only need 2 elements for trinity here. Flasks are very important. I like running with this setup. First, a life flask that will heal you instantly on low life, like Panicked, and remove corrupted blood. A quartz flask for phasing and extra suppress with curse resistance on it. A granite flask with extra armor of the armadillo or the pangolin, for example. And a jade flask with attack speed on it, or you can go with a Xeris Promise for chaos res and some extra damage, or even a Dying Sun if you want more coverage, but in my opinion it's absolutely unnecessary. And now for the gem setup, here is what I'm using. In the 6-sling bow, use Tornado Shot, elemental damage with attacks, Inspiration, Trinity, increased critical damage, and greater multiple projectiles. In your helmet, Tornado, Onslaught, Hydrosphere for exposure, and Sniper's Mark. Now in the chest, which is the 5-link Ballista setup, we use Tornado Shot, Focus Ballista, Ballista Totem, elemental damage with attacks, and increased critical damage. And finally, in your remaining 4 links, you want Grace, Determination, Herald of Ash, and Precision, that you want to keep low level so you have enough mana to cast. And in the other one, a Dash plus Second Wind, followed by a Cast on Death and Portal setup. This way, even if you die, you will get back on track in no time, and it just prevents a lot of frustration in my opinion. Let's talk about upgrades. Here is the very first upgrade that you will want. It's an enchanted helmet with Tornado Shot fires an additional secondary projectile. It helps with the clear and costs around 4 or 5 exalts. If it's more expensive than 5x, then head to the TFT Discord and search for a lab runner and order it from them. It should cost you at most 5 exalts. Then you can get a better bow with higher EDPS and possibly an additional arrow, better jewelry with more life, more attributes, more everything. You can also get a Watcher's Eye with precision crit multi, and if you're feeling extra softcore, you can even replace Grace or Determination with Anger and use an Anger crit multi Watchers that gives up to 50% crit multi. As you get levels, you might also look into a set of Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flames duel with Ricochet or Gathering Wind, so you can allocate Far Shot and gain tremendous damage. You can also get Awakened Gems, like Awakened Elemental damage with attacks, or Awakened GMP, which gives you an extra projectile, but it's very costly. But honestly, farming with this build is such a breeze that you might get this money in no time. Also, here we kill all the bandits, if you were wondering, and in terms of Pantheon, I recommend upgraded Brine King and Aberrath. Burning Ground is an absolute terror, so I really like Aberrath or the other one that mitigates chaos damage over time, because Dot is really the bane of this build. I quickly covered the leveling of this build in the notes of the PoB that you can find in the description, so make sure to check it out. I think this is a wrap. We got everything, all the information that we needed for this build is in the video, so thank you so much for watching. If you have any question, if I missed anything, please join my Discord, join my Twitch chat and ask away. My community is very helpful. I'm very helpful whenever I can if I read your questions, so don't be afraid. Also, massive shout out to Tensuki. Tensuki is a French streamer. He plays Omnishot every league, and I got some inspiration from his setup to come up with this one. So go give him a follow if you can. That's gonna be much appreciated. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed this content, if you enjoyed the build, please let me know in the comment section to let other people know that it's safe to invest in this character and that it's not a bait. It's not bait because, you know, everybody's afraid of being baited in PoE by guides. I think it's normal. Again, you can drop a sub to this channel. That would be appreciated. Thank you so much, guys. That was it. Bye.